Hi friends, my name is Emily. Welcome back to my channel. I cannot wear these glasses. They are so dirty. Today I am going to be discussing The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen and The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill. So I read The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill in March as part of the FemFanTale readathon. One of the challenges for that readathon was to read a fairy tale retelling. And I thought, oh perfect, I have this beautiful book, a Little Mermaid retelling. It's interesting because it seems to me to be calling back to both Hans Christian Andersen's version of the tale and the Disney version, which like radically cleans up that tale and gives it a happy ending. Gives it a non-Christian happy ending because oh boy, is The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen heavily Christian. Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish author. The Little Mermaid was first published in 1837 in a collection of fairy tales for kids. You do have that classic trade element of trading your voice for legs, but unlike the Disney version, which I'm sure we're probably more familiar with, she would be able to be like the most beautiful dancer in all of the world, notable for dancing, but it would always feel like she was walking on glass or knives and her feet will bleed terribly. Hans Christian Andersen made the point of saying that mermaids have no souls. Only humans, Christian humans, have souls and can go to heaven. Mermaids have no souls, so when they die, they sort of like disintegrate into sea foam. One of the things that the Little Mermaid is getting out of the bargain of her legs and humanity is the potential for a soul. So basically, if she gets her man to love her and marry her, in marriage he will be sharing part of his soul with her and she'll get to go to heaven. See what I mean about the very Christian aspects of this? In Hans Christian Andersen's version of this tale, her sisters decide to try and save her, get her out of the bargain by shaving their heads, trading their hair for a knife. And if the Little Mermaid can kill the man she loves, she will be allowed to return to the sea, live out her life as a mermaid, and eventually turn to foam. But she can't do it. She cannot make that selfish choice. She opts to die and turn to foam. But instead of ceasing to exist, she becomes an earthbound spirit, a daughter of the air, because she strove to get a soul, and her selflessness of not murdering the prince earns her a chance to buy a soul after 300 years of good deeds. So The Little Mermaid was very Christian. As a tale specific for children, obviously we can see like the heavy morals that are sort of typical of what we think of fairy tales for children. Obviously we can see that the Bible and Christianity really influenced Hans Christian Andersen's work, which kind of makes sense because Christianity was big in Danish culture at this time. I mean, it makes sense that if fairy tales are a form of cultural production, they are a form of cultural teaching, that it would include the religion of the time. Disney really cuts out that Christianity, takes out the whole soul thing, takes out the pain for the legs thing, and gives Ariel the happy ending. So we see a real sanitizing of the story. It basically becomes like a easy, sellable white bread version of the story. You know, instead of having like your dark, rich, seedy bread, all of a sudden you have your mass-produced Wonder Bread of a story. In my mind, The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill calls back to both stories in that she specifically gives this Little Mermaid red hair, which I don't think, it's been a while since I've read the Hans Christian Andersen tale, I don't think she's specifically red-headed in Hans Christian Andersen's version of the tale. But to me, and I'm sure to a lot of modern readers, the red hair calls to Ariel. It is the character that I'm picturing when Gaia is being perved on by this creepy older friend of her father's. It is the character that I'm picturing whose legs are literally rotting off while she tries to get Oliver to fall in love with her. To me, The Surface Break is obviously a feminist critique of the Little Mermaid fairy tale. We have the literal personification of patriarchy in the Sea King. He rules over everyone. His word is law. His daughters must obey his command. He is selling them to various people to make marriages. He literally doesn't care about them as people, just cares about them as valuable objects. They are beautiful, they are thin, they are all heterosexual, or at least they all have to pretend to be heterosexual. They must groom themselves in such a way, they must be pure. He banishes anyone who doesn't fit his ideal beauty to the outskirts of the kingdom. That brings us to the sea witch, Ceto, who is in fact the Sea King's sister. And she is everything that he despises. She is a woman with power, she's a woman with magic, she speaks her mind, she takes up space, she is a plus-sized woman, and she is critical of his rules. And so in that, in Ceto, we see feminism personified. And so we have two very like one-dimensional fairy tale inspired characters representing larger systems, basically. In many ways that makes sense to me because this is a fairy tale. Fairy tales tend to be fairly simplistic. They tend to be a little bit black and white. So to have two characters that basically represent two opposing forces makes sense. Overall, this book does a really good job of like feminism 101. I think that makes sense. Like, this book isn't for me. I can safely say that I've spent probably well over a decade thinking about feminism, studying feminism. 100% can say that this book isn't for me, and that is fine. If this Little Mermaid retelling, which is an like easy access point, is something that engages a young person and gets them to think differently or to think critically about the way we think about gender, sex, sexual orientation, body difference, disfigurement. If this book gets a young person to start asking questions and to start thinking about injustices they see in the book and injustices that they see in real life, that's a win. My biggest issue with this book is the ending, and this gets into spoiler territory. Throughout the book, we are introduced to these other female sea creatures that aren't mermaids. They are called the Rusalka. These are creatures that the sea witch sort of has taken under her wing, and they are women who die tragic deaths at sea. And so they are women who have experienced extreme violence and extreme trauma and come back to life as these vicious, literally man-eating sea creatures. It's the fact that at the end of this book, the Little Mermaid, let me read you this paragraph. So the Little Mermaid has decided not to murder Oliver. She has decided instead kill herself with the blade that her sisters bargained for. And she says, quote, "I will be a warrior, I decide, driving the knife through the air and aiming true at my heart. The searing pain muffling my sister's cries. I will grow my nails to claws and shave my teeth to blades. I will flay the skin from the bones of men like my father. I will tear them apart and I will eat them raw. Oh, I will set them on fire and devour their ashes whole. I will be Rusalka. I will have my vengeance." End quote. And that is on page 309. It is literally the very last chapter, like very literally the last paragraph of this book. And when I read that, I was like, oh boy, I think we missed the point of feminism, because you can't just eliminate all of the people who disagree with you. You don't have to give them a platform, you don't have to give them your attention, but you can't eliminate them. And I feel like this is a literal thing, like we're meant to read this as a literal thing in the book, because even though she is returning to the sea in this new way as this killer of men, she's not getting her voice back. Her voice is gone. She does not have a voice to tear men apart with her words. She's not going to use this voice that was her most powerful feature as a singer, the thing that brought her the most attention, right? She's not going to use this voice for good. She's not going to use this voice to make change. She's not going to use this voice to tear through the arguments of the sexist society around her. She's going to literally tear into people she disagrees with her teeth and kill them and take revenge, which I don't think is a great feminist message. Let's eliminate all the people we disagree with. And I mean, if you're a white nationalist, what does that look like? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't just eliminate all the people you disagree with. Like, the point of feminism is asking questions and starting discourse, like mind-changing discussions, not literally destroying people. And I think this violent conclusion might be satisfying within the narrative, but I think it detracts from the purpose of the story, which is to introduce people to feminism and to feminist ideology. It had me on its side right until literally the last paragraph, where I was like, nope, nope, nope. Nope. I would love to hear your thoughts on fairy tale retellings. I would love to hear your thoughts on The Surface Breaks if you have read it. Before we go, we have to say thank you to my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this and other long-form content possible. Thank you also for making VEDA possible. Your comments and messages on Patreon have been wonderful. I really appreciate your support. If you are interested in becoming a patron, links to that will be in the description box down below, as well as linked on the end screen. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon.